Okay, I have 11 o'clock. We have a quorum. Pat might jump in here. Patricia, sorry, Pat.
That's okay.
I'll call you Patricia too sometimes, but she may jump in. But I'll call the meeting to order, and hopefully you've all received the minutes from Joe earlier in the month. Another great job, Joe. Thank you. Are there any questions or additions, corrections to the minutes of October 20th?
No.
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Joe?
Clarification. I wasn't looking who seconded that. Is it Chuck?
Pat.
Pat? All right.
All in favor of approving the minutes? Just a wave is good. I'm not going to take a roll call like city council does. All right, thanks. Public speak. Anyone out there, Brendan?
Nothing yet.
Okay. There was a person there, just in case you didn't all hear. If she comes back on, we'll let her in at some point. Financial report.
All right. So I'm going to just share the screen real quick here. I'm sure you guys have this, but just in case. I had to do, and I apologize for this, but I don't have the full Adobe program, so I've had we've had complaints from people in the public saying that they aren't able to access the Zoom link from the board packet. So now I've had to condense everything into Word. So, and it's going as far as even taking the expense control report and turning it into a JPEG so I can drop it into Word. I'm sure there's probably an easier way, but this is how I've had to do it. So anyway, so let's see here. So this is pretty much the outline. You can see it's and hopefully everybody can see it. I tried to enlarge it enough, but you know, I have nothing to report for this expense control document. Everything seems to be moving along as we anticipated.
So everything's okay. I think I lost you there a little bit, Brendan. So, so you're fine with where we are with budgeted year to date?
Yep.
No surprises?
Nope, no surprises. Still keeping a close eye on the transportation line item. You know, just because, you know, we are, you know, taking more rides in and going further areas. But other than that, nothing to report.
Silly question, but when is the start and the end of fiscal year?
So June 30th would be the end. So June 30th, 2021 would be our end of fiscal year, and July 1st of 2020 would have been the start of it.
So what we want to look at too is the percentage expense balance for the end of December to make sure that it's not beyond 50% at that point, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
Or if it is, Eileen, obviously Brendan might have a good explanation why something is higher, something is lower, like you just mentioned about transportation.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have, just give me 1 second. I'm going to try to admit Lynn, who was trying to get in previously.
Okay.
Let me just check to see if she actually is now in. Hi, Lynn. This is Brendan, from the director from the Easthampton Council on Aging. I tried to let you in earlier, and if you would like to do it, we kind of you know, went over the public speak section, but we're happy to go back if you have anything you'd like to contribute. Oh.
Pat, how did you become Lynn?
Sorry. I went back to the computer, so
Okay,
is there anything you were saying? I'm sorry.
So you're
up for public speak, Lynn.
I am definitely not Lynn, but that is who probably used the computer last year at work, so
Okay.
what I'm going to be for the rest of the meeting.
Oh, that problem.
All right.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
I needed that, Pat.
Yeah.
I think we need a motion to accept the financial report.
So moved.
I'll second that.
So Chuck and Eileen, any further questions or discussion? All in favor of the financial report?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Highland Valley, I'm not sure if you've had a meeting yet, Pat, or not.
I did.
Good.
It was a lot of stuff, and it was very exciting, and I was happy to be there. There was actually another new person from Easthampton as well, Sam Sharon. I don't know if folks know who he is. Good guy. He lives here in town. You probably know his wife, which is Jessica Allen. And so I did a lot of listening, took a lot of notes, and I was hoping there wouldn't be a test later, and they said there would not be. So it's all good. I'm happy to be a part of that group.
So Sam is a new board member?
As well, yeah. Yeah, I think they had, I know there was at least 2. There might have even been 3.
Nice. So Brendan, just for clarification real quick, is Pat sort of a liaison with us to the board, or is he an actual board member?
I'm a full-fledged board member over there.
You are? Love it.
Yeah, I missed a meeting, and then all of a sudden I was a board member.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That'll teach you to miss a meeting.
Yeah.
Pat, I'm sure on many levels there's probably a lot of things that Highland Valley is discussing, and I'm not sure, and I could talk to you about this outside of the board meeting, but
Yep.
And maybe this is something that could be brought to them, I'm not 100% sure, but we're finding we have quite a few folks that are underneath the home and community-based services waiver that are not getting the full amount of hours that they were supposed to be getting for personal care. And that seems to be a frequent complaint with some of our folks that are on it, that there's a shortage or a high turnover with PCAs. And so, obviously we get in touch with the care advisors to see what's going on, but I think that's becoming a theme over the last few months, is that people are being given X amount of hours. We have one gentleman who's been approved for, I think, something to the tune of 30 hours and is only getting 10 hours of that because of turnover. So it is a concern of his, because he feels that he truly needs that additional assistance throughout the day.
Okay.
And like I said, we could talk about that later, but I just wanted to bring that up so both of us are thinking about it.
Okay, absolutely.
All right.
And great to hear that there's another person from Easthampton, and you're right, Pat. We all know Jessica as our former city planner, so great to have another Easthampton representative on the board over there.
Any chance Sam would want to serve on the COA board?
I thought he actually was interested, and I think he ended up somehow getting connected with that one, and so I'll ask him again, but I don't think it would be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I just want to bring to attention, Eileen had, in part of that COA board meeting reminder had obviously said that she won't be seeking re-election for board members, which is truly sad, but I understand exactly why you need to do that.
Eileen won't be.
No, I was due to renew in December 31st. I got the letter from the mayor, and I opted not to renew. So I informed her, and I informed Brendan. My term is done December 31st.
Ooh.
So hopefully everyone did their homework and got a new member.
Well, there's still time for us to talk to you about potentially staying on.
Yeah, well, no, it's time for some new blood.
Well,
Brendan,
okay.
how many are we supposed to have on this board, if you could refresh my memory?
9?
9, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I believe we've been at 6 or 7 for quite a while.
Yep.
And unfortunately, Pat, what makes that tough is a quorum is still a majority of 9, even though, if we had 3 members or 4 members, we just wouldn't be able to meet.
Right.
So we still have to have the majority of 9. But Eileen, sorry to see you go, but
Oh, it's a good thing for me.
well, for you maybe, but
You don't want to stay with us? I mean, I think.
Well, I'll still volunteer whatever you need. So if I'm here, I'll volunteer. If I'm on the road, I'll wave.
Well, certainly, it goes without saying that, all of us, deeply appreciate everything you've done for the COA.
Oh, thank you. Well,
I just want to acknowledge that. What was that? I'm sorry.
You. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, no, it's, I know that you've contributed a lot over the years, and, it's time to move on to the next chapter, which, we all understand.
Yeah, and I'm on a new board. It's the Easthampton Charity Committee. So that hasn't even gotten up and running yet. It pre-existed, but in a weird way, and now they're formalizing it. So Barbara LeBombard scooped me up for that one. So
good.
I'll still be involved.
We'll know where to find you.
Okay.
Okay,
just to clarify, Eileen, is that the same organization that finds, is it kind of like the emergency funds through the Helping Hand Society?
No, it's a weird thing. From what was explained to me in the past, people used to show up at a certain time of year and get a $50 check from the city clerk. And they decided that this really needed a better focus and more formalized process, such as trying to definitely meet a legitimate need, and whether it is to design criteria for the participants to have to meet, or whether we need to focus it on a larger donation going to one specific area. So we haven't even had our first meeting yet. I went through all that, the paperwork and the online stuff. So I got through that, got through the nomination, and we'll see what happens. But that was several months ago, and we still haven't had a meeting, but Barbara's probably been pretty tied up with the election. So, and she's the head of this group. So.
Okay.
I think, Brendan, if I'm not mistaken, a long time ago, someone left money to the city through an estate, and I believe it was able to be distributed at the discretion of the city clerk.
Yeah.
There's a name for it also. I thought there was a name of the fund based on the person who left the money to the city. And I don't think it was like $1 million or anything, but I believe the genesis of that was something to do with an estate that was left to the city.
Okay.
And Eileen's right. It was very much informal, very much at the discretion of the city clerk, whoever that might be over the years.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Brendan, on to you.
All right. So I have a breakdown of, since the last time we met, just some statistics. As far as outreach services, we've been from October 15th through November 10th, before I had to submit this to the city clerk. We had 85 unduplicated clients. And you'll see here underneath office consultation, I should be very clear what we're doing. So at the front entrance of our building, where we have that immediate glass surrounding the front entrance, we've been having people, because there have just been so many requests for people to come in for open enrollment and fuel assistance that are struggling to, get through the process of submitting what they need to have submitted for either health insurance purposes or fuel assistance reasons. So we've kind of created this plexiglass partition right at that front entrance, and we've been able to keep people semi inside the building, but also separating staff from the clients we're working with. So there is this section here, but that's kind of what we're doing right now. That's been our workaround. And then for folks who are unable to go up the front steps, we've used our elevator lobby as another resource. People were, having a difficult time, doing applications over the phone. So we have had some, but we're really kind of doing it on a case-by-case basis. But so there's 85 unduplicated clients, and you can see here out of this 85, we've had 350 as far as duplicated services, whether they came back with fuel assistance, congregate meals, whatever the case may be. As far as transportation goes, right now we've been hovering around 40 for the month of October into early November, and overall, I just actually pulled the EOEA report that I'm going to be submitting soon. And for the fiscal year, I want to say that we came close to pulling off almost just shy of probably 4,000 one-way rides. So despite the pandemic, we still had high transportation statistics. So, all right. Now, this is some good news. Sorry. You should go on.
No, that's all right. I was just curious. So you said 4,000 for the year. Is that what is that compared to last year? Does that seem?
We're about the same. So despite the pandemic, we're averaging right in that same zone. So I feel like what happened was as we hit a lull with transportation during March, April, and then into May, we found that doctors were starting to schedule appointments into the summer, the early summer. So we ended up getting this uptick. And now that the numbers are increasing again, I have a feeling that transportation is going to take another drop. Because the numbers are higher now than they were when we were at the peak, if I'm correct.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
So, we're at the very beginning of the peak.
Thank you.
Yep. And then, Tom, do you need to call into the old business, or do you want me to just jump right in?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, jump right into old business.
Okay. So here's some good news. We were constantly going back and forth about what we were going to get with our EOEA formula grant. There was a lot of speculation that we were going to have cuts through our EOA formula grant. And as far as local aid goes, we got funded the same exact amount that we did last year.
Great.
So that's a huge plus. It says $42,000 in local aid would be given to Easthampton COA, but it's technically, and I don't know how I made that error, but it's technically $42,000 or $42,060 in local aid for Easthampton COA. And the important thing is here, I think the great thing is, and again, about us being able to hold on to this grant money. So if we don't use this by the end of the fiscal year, we could still carry it over. So I think if we found that the numbers were high and we weren't able to reopen, and some of our virtual classes, we're moving along with the virtual classes, but they're just not as popular as in-person or on-site classes. So it's nice to hold on to that funding, because I don't know what FY22 looks like, but as far as this fiscal year, we've been cleared with the $42,060. So we're very, very fortunate. And if it's up to our discretion to figure out if we're going to use all that funding in this fiscal year or hold on to it in hopes of possibly putting a Band-Aid on FY22.
Great.
So there's that. And I'll let Joe talk about this, but we've been meeting, and I want to continue to bring this up in as far as the old business goes, because I feel like it's really important work. But we've been moving along with the Senior Tax Work-Off Committee. We're currently working on a draft. Joe, I don't know if you want to add anything. I've put in a couple of things here.
You look fine, Brendan. In fact, I was going to suggest that since you were an attendee at the meeting between the mayor and the department heads, maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So, and you'll see here on October 29th, Peg Conniff did a brief presentation for all municipal department heads. I'm almost certain that all of the department heads were there, or at least a representative from every department. And essentially, she went over what the tax abatement means, what the committee has been working on, and looking at more or less how department heads could use volunteers from this program, whether it was for a short-term project or if it was for an ongoing position that just wasn't funded by city appropriation. So I think, overwhelmingly, we found that different department heads were on board with this. Finance seems to think that it shouldn't be too much work on their end, which of course was a concern of ours, being part of the Senior Tax Work-Off Committee. There were a lot of questions about, what does it mean for tax filing purposes for the individual, how that looks, what the total amount of the tax abatement would be. And so these are things that we're still ironing out. But during that October 29th meeting, I think we found that when we're gauging the support of department heads, that they seem to be on board with it. And I think, city planning and the police department were already starting to think of ways that they could possibly use volunteers. So, there's still a lot that we need to work on, but I think overwhelmingly, like I said, the city is in support of this. And so we're hoping that we can launch it sometime in the next year or so if possible. And that, again, we have to work on those dates. And this is all going to be based on what's in the tax overlay, although JP is looking into ways of potentially using CPA funding. I don't know if that's a possibility, so it's less of a burden to the taxpayer, but even still, with a pilot program, compared to some other things, this shouldn't really be, this is like, tip of the iceberg for, the tax overlay.
Great.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about the Senior Tax Work-Off Committee or anything like that? No. And I think the reason why I keep on wanting to provide updates to this is because clearly, as a community, we need to constantly be in search of ways to help people age here and to be able to do it financially. And if, we're looking at possibly, using the full amount that the state allows, which is a $1,500 tax abatement. So that would, help a lot of our folks who are, constantly walking this fine line, and we know from, the new school building, we had a lot of concerns about what that meant for property taxes. It was a huge draw, of course, in our needs assessment, the same thing. People were very concerned, and that was, as we were wrapping up the needs assessment, this is the number one thing that kept popping up is what does it mean for me as I continue to age in this community? Am I going to be able to afford it? And so I think as a community, we really need to start pushing for these things. And so I just feel whatever tools that we can use to allow people to stay here, people who've been here for decades, who built this community, we need to do it, and we need to start acting on it. So again, I can't thank Joe enough for being part of that. It's so we're working on it.
Good point. Same.
All right.
We did see some advertising about the sand delivery.
What was that?
I think we saw some advertising about the sand delivery.
Yeah, so I've got, here's something to put out there. If you guys, I'm going to start reaching out to local restaurants. And of course I could buy some from Abishan, but the 5-gallon buckets, we had just enough to do the initial registration. So we had 70 total, and we did that on November 5th. So the fire department and the police department, we all, we broke down the 70 into 3 different routes, and we managed to get it out. And but we have several people who are on the waiting list. So I think we've already reached out to Mike over at Big E's to see if he has any 5-gallon buckets, and we'll probably be reaching out to local restaurants as well. And if in a real pinch, we could always buy some from Abishan. But surprisingly, they're pretty expensive, if you buy them at a hardware store. But it was a huge hit, and we weren't sure what was going to happen and what kind of support we were going to get for the program. But the fire and police department really stepped up, so we're very grateful for that.
How many of those how many buckets do you think you need, or how many? Where do you do they normally come from the Triad guys, and is that who provides them? And then when they run out, they run out.
Yeah, exactly. So. Dave Fenton from the Sheriff's Department gave us just enough he gave us 60. I pulled together another 10 from various sources. So typically we get the buckets through them. And Dave Fenton, I think he usually just touches base with local restaurants, and which, like I said, I plan on doing. It shouldn't be hard to secure it. And I think right now we have 6 additional people waiting. But I think, we made those 70 deliveries in under 2 hours. So, and again, that's all because of fire and police helping us along the way. Otherwise, it would have taken us twice as long.
Great.
So we're finding that and to be honest with you, a lot of the people, we sent out a PSA to people who have used the sand delivery in the past, but we ended up with a lot of new people on this sand delivery registration for this year. So
yeah. Good.
All right. As far as new business goes, I met with Chris Norris, of course, our new fire chief here in town. We were discussing the possibility of a senior safe grant program and what that looks at. And I think we're still, in discussion about what's the best way to utilize this money. Chris put in for it and was awarded, I think, $3,000. But essentially what it can be used for is the following, and you can see it on the packet there. It's smoke and carbon monoxide installation, testing and replacing of batteries, installation of house numbers, which is something that we are still doing through Triad. So that might be a good combination, again, between fire department and Triad. And then, of course, there's fire extinguishers and night lights that might be available. So we're still in discussion about it. But I think what we find is when, the fire department's going out to people's homes, and especially that of the elderly, they're not replacing the batteries. And it's a major problem. And we want, of course, our folks to be safe. So this is exactly to address that issue. So we'll see what happens. But Chris and I will be in touch as we go along. And I know that Chris is really trying to reach out to the COA, which is nice. I think, he wants to be part of even food delivery, just so, he can put in information about the Senior Safe Grant and more programs through the fire department to make sure that our folks are safe. So I just see this as a, great outreach service for both the COA and the fire department. All right. So the next bit of the next part of new business is everyone at the municipal through the municipality has been offered free COVID testing. This is something that just started on November 4th. Over half of our department is doing weekly testing. And obviously none of us have had symptoms. None of us have been sick, knock on wood. But this is just one extra way to make sure that, even though it's not our full department, that, we have a consistent testing process for our folks. Because while we have limited contact, for example, some of our drivers are still going out with folks and working directly with people. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's really important that we at least, have an understanding as to what's going on. And especially if someone's asymptomatic, and we can catch that early enough in the process. And then, I think it's really important. So I can't thank, the mayor's office enough for setting this up with Williston and the Board of Health and of course, the Public Health Department. So that's something that's been happening. And I feel a little bit safer, being here in the community and operating, having these tests readily available to us. So.
And Brendan, that's 6 COA staff members. That's not 6 citywide employees, you're saying?
No, there's much, there's that's just our staff directly.
Okay.
6. So out of the 8 that we have, 6 are actively getting tested every week.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why I have to cut the meeting short today, is I've been going over this idea, and I've talked to Amherst recently about this, Mary Beth Olgowitz, who's the director of the Amherst COA. We were looking at the possibility of managing the Meals on Wheels program here through Easthampton. Although I found out just last week that the only towns that are in the Highland Valley catchment service area, only 2 towns are managing the Meals on Wheels program. So one of the reasons why this came up, and it was something that I thought of, is because there are a lot of folks who are in the Meals on Wheels program that may not be accessing services here, and I want to have a better understanding as to what's going on with this group. So in total, I think there are 80 people getting Meals on Wheels. So the discussion that will be had today, I'll be meeting with Nancy Mathers and Alan Wimet via Zoom, of course, to talk about what the reimbursement rate would be. Because right now, the way Amherst has it set up, I don't know their total numbers, but what they end up getting is a reimbursement through Highland Valley on Title III grant money. And they're able to have, with that money, they're able to get a part-time dining site coordinator who ends up, organizing all these meals. The catch is, though, is that if we were to take this on, we would be looking at not only serving Easthampton, but Southampton. So that would be part of the package. And I'm not 100% sure we're going to jump on this, but I think what we find is, yes, we have the take and go meals, and those have been pretty successful. But there are some people, and they haven't changed. Some of the ASAPs, like Greater Springfield Senior Services, I believe, and maybe Western Mass Elder Care, have changed their eligibility requirements for Meals on Wheels because of COVID. From what I understand, that hasn't happened with Highland Valley. So we have a whole cross-section of people out there that aren't getting congregate meals, but are on the Meals on Wheels program. So we're, going through this, and I'm going to see what the conversation brings about today, and just see if that's something that we want to lock into. I don't know when we're going to open. I know that we're, possibly, to the new year, obviously, but I think it would be important to start thinking, if we're down for another several months, is there another essential service that we could grab a hold of and manage? But if it's too much, I'm not going to, right now we're kind of at a deficit with volunteers. And Amherst had cautioned us to make sure that we really kind of negotiate reimbursement rates with Highland Valley, because that was one of the issues they were finding, is that they couldn't get what Amherst thought would be appropriate for a budget wasn't adding up to what Highland Valley was putting out there. And so I think they're currently in negotiations with Highland Valley right now to determine whether or not they're going to continue the service.
So Brendan, could you just, if you're aware of it, could you just explain how it works today, the Meals on Wheels?
So the Meals on Wheels, yeah, they have pretty strict eligibility requirements. So you really have to truly be, you can't just call Highland Valley up and say, okay, I need Meals on Wheels, I'm isolating. They have a whole list of requirements, and it really kind of falls into activities of daily living. So if there are things like, if you are truly defined as homebound, and I don't have the specific requirements in front of me, but it's a very, very, very narrow eligibility requirement. And so a lot of people who are just looking for a meal, say because COVID's happening and they don't want to be running out, that doesn't necessarily qualify them for Meals on Wheels. They have to be identified as being homebound. And so, and not having access to any type of food delivery service, or a family or a friend that brings them to the store, so it's really narrow. And it's a shame that and I don't want to speak totally on Highland Valley's part, because I'm going to have this conversation with them today. But from what I understand from Amherst, they're saying that it's very difficult to, get someone to be on Meals on Wheels. And if we were to take over this program, we would be ultimately using those same guidelines. So we could very well be rejecting people who are looking for this service because they don't meet the criteria.
So Easthampton residents today that are getting Meals on Wheels are getting it directly through a Highland Valley program.
Yeah, so what was happening was Riverside Industries was managing, or they were at least delivering, should I say. They were delivering the meals. And then now they have a whole host of volunteers that are going out, but currently Highland Valley is managing it. So again, I think out of the 24 towns, only 2 of them are running this. So, a lot of, questions are going to be asked today at, the meeting, because I don't know if it's going to be more than, we can handle. And I mean, the only way that we can figure this out is to get into some type of discussion about that. And that's what's happening today.
Brendan, just an idea, and it's way down the road. But when I used to do my crafter group at Cliffview Manor, they have a fabulous kitchen and they have a large dining room there. And this may be something that would be valuable in the future if that would be a site per se. And, you know, might be worth looking into how many individuals that are at Cliffview are getting Meals on Wheels and stuff like that. So it's just an idea, but, and it's possible you may be able to find volunteers that reside there that may be able to help out with distribution and cooking and stuff.
Yeah, and I think the other thought that I had is that while the state is continuing, especially as we have the high numbers, they're continuing to ask that COAs be very mindful of how we're utilizing volunteers.
Yeah.
A lot of my volunteers are within that age group that, you know, are the most susceptible. And so we've continued to hold off on volunteer services. Then that's where I'd probably be looking towards outside agencies. I know that Easthampton Neighbors has a handful of folks who said they would, you know, be interested in delivering meals. So I probably would outsource the delivery portion to maybe Easthampton Neighbors or another outside organization. Because
Just as an aside, and you may be aware of this, but Our Lady of the Valley does a Take and Eat program where they provide meals on the weekends, because I believe Meals on Wheels is just Monday through Friday.
Right.
And I will tell you that, I mean, the person who's running it for the church right now is 79 years old. And she's looking for a replacement. And you're right about the age group of the volunteers. And I mean, they buy the food, they cook the food, and they deliver it. And I don't even know the numbers they're delivering to right now. But they are struggling also with volunteers and burnout of the volunteers that they do have. And they've probably been doing this for 5 or 6 years. And it's just getting to a point where volunteers are harder and harder to find.
Right.
Because this is like an every week thing.
Right.
You know, it's not like I'm volunteering to do a task and then it's over.
Right. And that's the other thing too, is that, you know, because this is considered an essential service, you know, we have to create, you know, alternate plans, you know, when we have bad weather, to figure out how we're going to get these meals over to people. So there's a lot to consider, you know, because one of the things that Amherst pointed out, they're like, yeah, it's all well and good if you have volunteers, but volunteers, like anyone else, might get sick, want time off. And so that's on us now to figure out how we're going to do that. And transportation, you know, this is something that I've been going back and forth with. You know, when we have these lulls in transportation, yeah, it would make sense, but transportation is so unpredictable that sometimes I don't know if I want to necessarily leave that. I mean, yes, they probably could deliver, you know, several meals for us, but I don't know if we would want to rely strictly on our transportation or our drivers to do that. It may not be, you know, reasonable for them to do that. So, but just so you guys know, I am thinking about this because I feel like if we're down for another several months, then I certainly feel like, you know, if there's another thing that we can do to, you know, plug in an essential service, I feel like we should be there. But
yeah, I'm not questioning at all, Brendan, the value or integrity of the program, but knowing there are days when I think you have to jump in the van and do some trips. You know, I could envision somewhere down the road that Brendan Rogers is out there delivering meals. And, you know, again, there's a lot of moving parts to this program. And I think it's good that you're exploring it. And I think you should continue to do that. But it is a big step if we decide to do it, especially with the volunteers that are needed.
Right. Well, I think the only benefit is that when I, you know, think of Easthampton Neighbors, is that they have some younger volunteers that we've already worked with for grocery delivery. And again, this is no contact, but really, if we're looking at a safer, you know, group to use, you know, we might have that option. So I don't want to, and a lot of our volunteers who are working with us previously want to get back out there. I can't. It's one thing for a staff person to get sick, where we may have like benefits or something like that, but it's another when you know, you have a volunteer running around in their own personal time, and then they get sick, that's all on them. And I just can't, in good faith, put our volunteers up to that. That's
well, the flip side too, Brendan, is just as important. I mean, God forbid a volunteer infects a senior that they're bringing a meal to.
Yeah,
You know?
I know. And that's why we, again, as far as these office consultations, the setup that we currently have, we're doing that on a case-by-case basis. But there are just some things that are impossible to do, like the delivery of food, like when we're doing the pantry run for the community center. It would be nice if we had drones to fly that stuff out, but, here we are. There's no other way around it. And so staff have participated in that. And certainly, again, this speaks volumes about the people who are working for me. I've been willing to go outside of their traditional job descriptions to be part of this and to be present in the community. So.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you're exploring it, and let's see so Amherst is one of the communities that's currently doing it?
Yeah, and Southwick is the other.
Okay.
I haven't talked to Southwick yet, but I'm probably going to this week.
Okay.
So that's 24 towns and only 2 of them. So I have a feeling that, I've been told that maybe it's more of a nuisance than anything, but still, I feel like it should be looked at. And if I decide ultimately between my staff and decide that it's a no-go, then, we won't. And they'll continue to deliver meals. It's not as if that service stops.
Right.
It just would mean, do we want our hands in this program to identify some of these people who are truly homebound and have no other resources? And certainly we want to know who those folks are. But, we also don't want to jump into something that's going to be incredibly difficult to manage.
Good. I'm glad you're exploring it. We're about 5 minutes away from when Brandon has to jump off. Is there any other questions or information? Anyone else going to miss Eileen? She'll be at our next meeting.
I got one more meeting to go.
Yeah, if you miss a December meeting, we're going to throw you off the board. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
I'll make that motion. Whoops, sorry. I'll second it.
Okay, Joe made the motion, Eileen seconded it. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. See you next meeting, December 15th.
All right.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you as
Stay
well.
safe.
you too.
Thanks.